and thanks for joining me for another episode of Talking Headstones. Today we're in the John Jamison Catholic Cemetery, which is in Penrith. So John Jamison, he arrived on the first fleet of the Cirrus, and then he was given land out in this area in 1805, which his estate was called Regentsville, which he had vineyards, wool mills, all sorts of stuff, a horse stud. And this graveyard or cemetery is part of his old property. To my right there is Mulgoa Road, where the old entry used to be, but it's now on my left. So we're going to have a look around. There is one person that we're going to concentrate on who had a lot to do with pioneering this part of Sydney in the Penrith area. So we'll go for a walk and we'll try and find some of the early graves. So I think the one we're going to look at, Mr. Delaney, is from 1832, I think. So thanks for joining me, and let's go. So John Jamison, he has a lot of things named after him in the Penrith area. He has a whole town named after him, Jamison Town. There's Jamison Hotel, and there's also the Jamison High School. Later on in his life, he passed his estate on to his son, Thomas, and they divided this up into two divisions. Can't really tell, but this in, I don't know, I'd say after the 1960s, with the urban creeping into this area, there was a lot of vandalism done in this cemetery. So a lot of the graves are either the headstones have been smashed or they're not there at all. So there are probably a lot of unmarked graves in here. So we're going to be looking at the grave of Nicholas Delaney. So we'll walk up to his headstone. This one would have been beautiful back in the day. Big wrought iron fencing around it. You can see that the headstone's fallen down. And that is of Thomas Domling, died in 1898 or 3, and also his beloved daughter Maria Pickwell, who died 28th April 1903, age 41. There's also his wife Mary, his eldest son Patrick. So I've done a little bit of research on Nicholas Delaney. There is a book about his life, The Rebel Hand, which I'll try and leave a link. Here we got the headstone to the memory of John Stapleton, died March 1st, 1839, aged 3 years and 4 months. Oh, that's a bit sad, isn't it? So if we head straight ahead, the one with the big footstone, This is the grave of Nicholas Delaney. So I'll read a bit of information on Nicholas. You can see here that he must have been a rather tall man because his headstone is up there and his footstone is probably at least 8 foot away. So it's hard to read what his actual grave says, but it says sacred to the something of Nicholas Delaney, who died 1861, aged, can't read, 02 children. Well, maybe you could read that better than me. It could be in Irish. So it says, as a young man living in Ballyellis on the Wicklow-Wexford border, Nicholas Delaney was caught up in the violent events of the Irish Rebellion of 1798. Inspired by the French Revolution and spurred by the cruelties inflicted under martial law, Catholics and Protestants throughout Ireland, led by the United Irishmen, rose up in the summer of 1798. After initial victories, the rebellion was crushed at Vinegar Hill and government reprisals began. Nicholas was tried and convicted of murder on the words of a notorious informer, Bridget Dolan, sentenced to death. He was reprieved and transported as a convict to Australia in 1802 aboard the Atlas II. So as I said, Nicholas arrived in Australia in 1802. I'd say that would have been on the Second Fleet, correct me if I'm wrong. Pretty quickly he became um, a worker with the Rum Corps, building roads. He built the road around Mrs. Macquarie Chair in the Botanical Gardens, and he was also the overseer for building the road, the Great Western Road, so the road out to the Blue Mountains, where he was granted land uh, in the Penrith area and also in the Emu Plains area. He he was granted a liquor license where he had an establishment at the Emu Plains crossing of the Nepean River. I have paperwork here. I'll just read it because it's easier for me to read it than trying to remember all this stuff. Um, he also was one of the first settlers on the other side of the Blue Mountains to the west of Sydney. He had land and cattle in the Penrith area, then in Emu Valley, Appin and Bathurst. He married his wife Elizabeth Bailey, who was a free settler, and they went on to have 12 children and have over 2,000 descendants in Australia, New Zealand, the UK, and the United States. So I'll tell you a bit about how he died. So it says, before Mr. Justice Burton and a jury of inhabitants, John Kennedy was indicted for assaulting Nicholas Delaney on the highway near Penrith on the 2nd of September and stealing from his person one coat, one handkerchief, and 4 £1 notes. So it appeared that they were both drinking at the King's Head at Penrith, where Delaney was paid the sum of £5. Shortly afterwards, both seen in company on the road opposite Mrs. Brooks' premises. Apparently both were very intoxicated. Delaney fell down into a gully, but both he and the prisoner afterwards went along the road, and when they had proceeded about a quarter of a mile, they got back over the fence to go near a cut through the bush to Delaney's house. One of Mrs. Brooks' servants, who was at work near the spot, saw them both get over and saw Delaney fall down. He got up again and went towards his own house. In about 10 minutes after this, the man looked around and saw Delaney lying on the ground with nothing on but his shirt, and the prisoner standing by him. He instantly gave an alarm, and the prisoner was taken into custody. All Delaney's clothes were found in a bundle. The prisoner said that he had taken the clothes from the taken the clothes for the purpose of taking care of them. Likely story. On the way to the watch house, a black handkerchief, the property Delaney, was found on the prisoner's person, but he told the constable that Delaney had stripped to fight him. Delaney was unable to speak and was removed to one of Mrs. Brooks' hut, where he was put into bed and slept for some hours. When he got up, he missed the handkerchief out of his pocket. He appeared nearly sober and started for the purpose of going home, but was found the next morning lying dead about a quarter of a mile from his own house. Dr. Black, who attended the coroner's inquest, deposed that he examined the body of the deceased, that there were several contused, lacerated wounds on the head and one on the nose, probably caused by falling onto a stump or stone. It was possible that a stick would have caused the wounds, but it was his opinion that they were caused by falls. On examining the brain, he was found about 3 ounces of extravasated blood on the left hemisphere. So this is the life of Nicholas Delaney, one of the early pioneers of this area, who came out and fought a life, worked hard, and now has thousands of descendants. So thanks for joining me again on another episode of Talking Headstones. Thanks to all the people who have subscribed. I really appreciate it. It means a lot to me that I have these subscribers, people that are liking and enjoying watching my videos. If you haven't watched one and you're not subscribed, please go ahead and do that. And I shall see you again on the next episode of Talking Headstones.